I'm Mike Vardy.
Meal planning is important because it prevents us from being a disappointed wreck when dinner time comes around and we have no clue what to make, or even if we have the ingredients to make the meal. It's a time and a money saver, but most importantly, it frees up valuable brain space. Creating a meal plan prepares us for the week to come and gives us peace of mind that we're organized and can feed ourselves and our family. That's why I do it, and that's why Plan to Eat helps me do it. Your subscription includes access to the Plan to Eat website and fully featured mobile apps on iOS and Android. And Plan to Eat gives you the tools to clip and organize recipes from any website, the ones your family loves and that fit your dietary preferences and needs. And you can create a meal plan around your schedule. Then what happens is the Plan to Eat software automatically creates an organized shopping list based on your plan. So sign up for your free trial at plantoeat.com/timecrafting. That's plantoeat.com/timecrafting. The coupon will be automatically applied to your account and can be used when you're ready to subscribe. It's valid for new customers only. Give Plan to Eat a try today.
And this is the Productivityist podcast. Peter Shankman is joining me here on the Productivityist podcast, and I couldn't be more delighted to have him on the show. He is the founder of Help a Reporter Out, better known as Harrow, and he has a new book coming out called Faster Than Normal, and we had a chance to chat and get to know each other in person at Tropical Think Tank. We got a chance to work together over at his Shankman's community, and Peter's just a great guy. You're going to get a kick out of this interview, and I hope you enjoy this discussion that I had with Peter Shankman, the author of the new book, Faster Than Normal, here on the Productivityist podcast. I'd like to welcome Peter Shankman to the Productivityist podcast. Peter, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, always a pleasure, man. Good to be here.
So this is an episode for those of you listening. You do not want to listen to it at anything but 1x speed. If you've got it at 1.25, 1.5, be careful, because Peter and I both have a tendency to speak faster than normal, which is, oddly enough, the title of your new book, Faster Than Normal, Turbocharge Your Focus.
Well done.
Productivity and Success with the Secrets of the ADHD Brain. Peter and I had the chance to, we've been, connected online for years, but we finally got a chance to meet at Chris Ducker's Tropical Think Tank. And I had no idea that you were working on this book when we met. You have so many things, so many irons in the fire, that this was just one of the things that kind of got glossed over. First off, how are you able to manage? Because I saw you working like a Tasmanian devil during all the sessions, yet you still didn't seem overwhelmed, out of place, feeling like you weren't being attentive. You knew what was going on. How are you able to do that? Like, how are you able to do that consistently, no less?
I think just years and years of doing it over and over. You get to the point where you know what you're doing, and more importantly, what what's happening and when you can focus on certain things, right? I'm very aware of what's going on. I'm very aware of what sessions are happening. I know the first 5 minutes of any session are not going to be, important. First 5 minutes of any session are going to be people talking and sitting down. It can be, the next 10 minutes. It's all about how you put that stuff together. And what's interesting is that people who do that tend to do it without even realizing they're doing it.
Right.
It's one of those things that, especially when you have ADHD, it's one of those things that you do. You start doing these things and you don't realize you're doing them. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, what do you mean I'm being super focused? No, that's just how I live my life. What are you talking about? And there's no real difference. It's just sort of who you are, and it's how you create things.
So the way you operate, and one of the things you talk about, is the idea of the gift of ADHD, which a lot of people, when they first hear ADHD, they're thinking, I'm sorry you can't focus, or I'm sorry that you've got this. It's almost like. But you've called it the gift of ADHD. Why do you consider it to be a gift? Whereas so many other people are like, I'm so frustrated that I have this.
I think the reason that most people think that it's a horrible thing is because they live their lives in this. They're told that it's a horrible thing. If you're, that's the dog analogy. If you're a dog and you're smacked around, you're beaten down, you're going to eventually come to just assume all people are like that, right? If you're told from the second that you're diagnosed that this thing you have is a horrible thing and it's a disease and you need to fix it and it means that you're broken, you're going to start believing that. And what happened to me was I'm very fortunate. I had parents who didn't necessarily think that. And when I was a kid, ADHD didn't exist. When I was a kid, it was sit down, you're disrupting the class disease, right? And over time, disrupting the class, I had to find ways to not disrupt the class, because when you get notes sent home every day for 3 weeks in a row, to the point where your father calls the dean or calls the assistant principal of the school and says, "I'm just curious, can you tell me if there's anything that my son has done right lately?" That sort of, you got to learn how to handle that. So for me, it wasn't a question of going on meds. Nothing like that existed. It was a question of figuring out what to do to improve, to be better. And so I didn't realize at the time, but everything I was doing, as crazy as it seemed by other people and all that, turned into some sort of self-medication that wound up helping me. And, so now when I do things like understand that the first 5 minutes of a conference or a lecture or whatever aren't going to be that important, I don't need to pay attention to that, it helps. I can get through whatever. And so you just learn to sort of self-medicate and do these things. And you have to understand that they're not crazy if they work.
Right. Now, one of the things that you've done, and a lot of people probably have heard your name before, but like, why do I know the name Peter Shankman? In fact, it's how I, basically got to know you. I mean, you founded Harrow, Help a Reporter Out.
Yes,
and how did that come to be? And how did ADHD play a role in that whole thing? Because I mean, there's this idea of, and I know I get these messages all the time. Hey, you need to, I subscribe to Harrow. So it's like, okay, we need someone that's an expert in this area. So I see all this stuff and there's just so much information coming at you. Was that like a way of you saying, hey, I see this as a problem. I'm going to be able to kind of compartmentalize it and make a solution for it? Or was it just some kind of thing that came to mind? You're like, I'm going to execute, like I'm going to focus on this, hyper focus on this, execute it, and kind of see what happens.
So when you have ADHD, you usually have two speeds. My two speeds are, and only two speeds. My only two speeds are namaste and I'll cut a fish. And what that essentially means is that the only way that I am, chances are, if I'm sitting next to you on an airplane, I'm talking to you.
Right.
Okay. I mean, unless you fake your own death, I'm going to know everything about you by the time we land. ADHD people are naturally curious. And so what I would wind up doing in my life is I would just talk to everyone. And over time, my Rolodex got ridiculously big, and would start talking to people and figuring out what they're doing and how they're doing it. And so knowing reporters, running a PR firm back in the day, reporters would call me and say, Peter, you talk to everyone. I'm doing a story on XYZ. Who do you know? Right? Who do you know who does this? Who do you know who does that? And I would say, oh, call this guy. He does that. Or call this person. And what wound up happening was over time, reporters would start calling and they'd say, okay, I need a person who does XYZ, and someone over at the New York Times told me that you know everyone. I'd be like, okay, great. And I had to spend like 6 hours trying to find a person, right? I'm like, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. So where most people would sit down and they'd do homework and they'd figure it out and they'd say, maybe I should do this. I'm like in an airport lounge in Houston, and I say, well, let me buy the domain name Help a Reporter. Let me build a website. Okay, it's launched. Okay, I got to catch my flight now. And I basically launched a company and landed, and I sent an email before I took off. I said, hey guys, I'm launching this new thing. If you want to get queries from the media, just sign up here. And I landed with like 400 members, right? I'm like, okay, that works. It's got a company now. And so that's pretty much what I do. And people with ADHD, that's why it's a gift, because we 99.9% of the projects that never get done don't get done because people sit there, well, what if it fails? I'm like, okay, we'll try it. And if it fails, I'll just do something else. My first company, I started my first company, I went out on my own on the premise that, I didn't think it was if I fail. My premise was when I fail, I'll get a job. Well, it's been like almost 20 years. I haven't had to get a job yet. It's been really cool. And so my belief is basically just like, I'm very lucky, and here's how I can keep doing what I'm doing and have fun with it. And that is a classic ADHD trait, in that we love doing things that are fun, because when you do things that are fun, you get the dopamine, the serotonin, the adrenaline, all those things you love having in your head. You get more of those when you are doing the things that you like. It's when you have to do the things you don't like that you have to put sort of these rituals into place to be able to stay productive, because you're doing things, when you do things you like, it's easy. The dopamine's flowing, the adrenaline's flowing, you're happy. When you do things you don't like, that's boring as hell. So you have to figure out ways to stay motivated, ways to stay excited about the things you're doing. And that's where sort of the lessons and the sort of things that I've learned really come in handy. And that's the things that for people reading the book and listening to the podcast will get benefit out of, whether you have ADHD or not. If you have ADHD, you'll learn how to better adjust to that. If you don't have ADHD, you'll learn how to just get a few hours of productivity back in your life every single day.
As I'm, one of the things you talk about, the life rules that you follow to better accommodate your ADHD brain. I look at these, I'm like, yeah, these are productivity. Like these are the tenets of personal productivity as far as eliminate choice, right? Like, I mean,
exactly.
When we were in the Philippines, we talked about this a little bit, is my idea of theming your time. So when your brain goes, and this, I wouldn't say that I'm ADHD. In fact, I think I was probably misdiagnosed. There's almost this idea that I have too much crap going on, and that's probably why. And what I loved about your story about Houston is that it's almost like you had the idea and you said, if I don't do this now, it's not going to get done.
Exactly. But when you're ADHD, there are only two types of time. There's now and there's not now. Right. And so you have to if I have to get something done, that's why it's so important to give me an actual deadline. If you are working with me, I require a deadline. Not even if you say, I don't need, just get it to me whenever. Get it to me whenever is the kiss of death, because get it to me whenever soon is not an actuality. Right. So if you say to me, I need something by Thursday at 4 p.m., I'm going to get it to you by Thursday at 4 p.m. If you say get it to me whenever you can, I'm going to start working on it until the next thing comes up. And then that's the most important thing.
Right.
So by giving me a deadline guarantees that I'll get it.
And the great thing about the idea of working on that thing intently is that you're giving it that hyper focus, which again, the idea of working faster than normal, most people, spread that out over the course of 1 week, 1 month, 3 months. And then, I mean, you told me that how long did it take you to write this book? We talked about it a little bit off the top. It took you what?
The book was written on 2 round trip flights that were back to back, one Newark to Tokyo and then one Newark to Singapore. So Newark, Tokyo and back, I think I wrote chapters 1 through 5. Newark to Singapore and back 2 days later, I wrote chapters 6 to 10. And that's the interesting thing, in that I had to give a speech in Tokyo and then I had to give a speech in Singapore. And I could have very easily just gone from Tokyo to Singapore, right? It would have been a 3-hour trip. So I would have flown from Newark, Tokyo, given my speech, had a couple of days to chill, then taken a 3-hour flight to Singapore, given my speech, and flown home. No, instead, I flew from Newark to Tokyo, gave my speech, flew back to Newark, so another 14 hours. The next day, got back on a plane, flew to Singapore, gave a speech. And I was like, dude, you spent an extra 28 hours in the air. What the hell's wrong with you? No, I wrote a bestseller.
Yeah. That's
the only way I know how to write.
Right. And it was funny. We were talking a bit about Mark Maron at the top of the before we started recording, but I was listening to Tim Ferriss talk to Bill Burr recently on an episode of the Tim Ferriss show. And Bill Burr was talking about depression. And it's interesting because he says, he realized he's not clinical, but he has those thoughts of I should do this. He goes, no, there's that thought. I should go, work out, or I should go cook something, or I should go write this bit. And I think a lot of people, when you have those choices there, you put yourself in a position to let that primitive part of your brain take over and go, let's just do this. Let's just do the thing that's easy. And you're right. We don't want to do things that are hard. We would rather do things that are easy. But if the hard things are fun, and of course, and like I said, we talked about theming time. If you look at your day, and I'd be interested to know how you kind of routinize and ritualize your day, and we'll get to that in a second. But if one of my tricks, and I teach this in time crafting, is the idea that instead of asking yourself what's next on my list, it should be what day is it, and then the list gets smaller based on how you've defined the day. Oh, today is audio video day. Okay, well, what audio video work should I do? And once you trust that, that's the thing. So you essentially, and which is, talk about the gift of ADHD, you trust it implicitly, right?
Not only do I trust it, but I've come to realize that without it, I will fail. Okay. I mean, without having that sort of, so I just, it's funny. I have more writing than I have to do. And I can write a blog post here and there in my office, not a problem. But I have a proposal for a new book I want to write. And I literally sat down with my assistant this morning. I said, okay, when is my next cross-country trip? She says, well, do you need international or domestic? I'm like, no, I just need a West Coast trip because I only need to write a chapter. It's a proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, great. You're going to LA in October. Great. That's when I'll write it. And now I'm done. Now it's over. It's off my head and I feel better, right? Because I know that it's going to get done on those 5 hours, 6 hours from New York to LA. But, the thing you said about getting that sort of those thoughts into your head, when you're ADHD, it's very, very easy to do two things. Very, very easy to start something and run it from 0 to 100 miles an hour in 3 seconds because that's how fast our brains run. The problem with that, though, is that it works just the same when you have a negative thought. So I had a moment last night. I was trying for a morning show, one of the national morning shows for the book, and they said, "Hey, we love the idea, but we're passing on this. We don't, it doesn't." Okay. In the span of about 18 seconds, I went from having a really great day to hearing this news to realizing that nothing I've ever done in my life has been worth anything, and I'm completely worthless and completely full of shit, and I'm an imposter, and it's horrible, and I'm pathetic, and I should just die. That took about 18 seconds, and that's how fast the brain works. And my next thought was, okay, well, now you're miserable, so what do you want to do? Well, you can go out and you can go to a bar, you can get drunk, you can eat 4 pizzas, you could, never work out again, undo all the positive stuff you've ever done, or you could realize that you're an idiot for thinking like that and go get on your bike.
Mm.
And so you have to have these fail-safes.
Yeah.
And you have to have these fail-safes in life. Forget the fact if you're ADHD. It's one of the things, but also in your life, you have to have these fail-safes that say, you know what? You're going towards a negative place right now. Make this immediate right turn and prevent yourself from doing it. And to do that for me, and I'm not a shill for them. I paid for it. I don't work for them. I own a Peloton bike, and that's that bike that's connected to the internet that you can take it. That thing has saved my life because I got the call. I was in my kitchen. I walked into my bedroom, getting undressed as I did. I put on a pair of bike shorts. I put on my heart rate monitor. I found an on-demand class, 45 minutes, kicked my ass, but created the dopamine, the serotonin, the adrenaline that had immediately unflooded my brain before when I got that phone call. And I was right back in the game. I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm not useless. That was a professional setback. It'll take 2 seconds. Okay, I'm over it. Let's move on. So you have to have those fail-safes to get you out of those situations, because when your brain moves faster than normal, even when it doesn't, when you're a normal person, no matter what it is so easy to go into that sort of death spire, as it were.
Right.
And you got to figure out a way to get out of that.
So the other things you talk about are the idea of eating well and sleeping well. And one of the things I've noticed lately, and this is something I've been focusing more on, is the idea that I saw Rich Roll speak at World Domination Summit earlier this year. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, that how Rich looked before, I kind of look like now. So let me see what I could do about that. And what I've noticed is, again, for productivity across the board, the idea of eating well is helpful. I've stripped, I haven't eaten meat since July, like a mammal, since July 2nd. I've basically stripped down my trying to get, in terms of alcohol, I've lowered the consumption of that. You don't drink at all, right? You don't.
No, I quit because I said I don't have one drink.
Yeah.
Again, I don't have
namaste or but more slurred.
Exactly,
more slurred.
Same. I joke that it's the same. I drink the same way I eat pizza. Those people they order a pie and they have at home and it gets delivered. They have 2 slices. They put the rest in the fridge for what they call leftover pizza. Mm-hmm. Like the next day. That's not a thing in my world. I have never had leftover pizza in the history of my life.
So you buy
if I order
you buy a 6-pack, you drink the 6-pack.
Exactly. I buy a bottle of tequila. I drink the bottle of tequila, right. And it's just like, and I'm not trying to get drunk. It's there. Right. So the only it's the classic line from War Games, the movie. The only winning move is not to play.
Right. So it's very binary, right? Like you almost have to. I mean,
exactly what it is.
Yeah. I mean, you. The idea of sleeping well. Now you get up really early, and I'm not a morning person by any stretch of the imagination. But what I will say, and I've noticed this more since I started taking on personal monthly themes, and in the month of September, I did running, and I'm actually running my first race. Yeah. The first race I'm not being forced to run. Remember in school you were forced to run races? Now I'm actually doing this, and I ran. Actually, as we're recording this, yesterday I ran. I did my first 10K. So I actually ran, and it felt it like you talk about the idea of the dopamine breaks and things like that. But I found that even though I'm not up early, one of the first things I'll try to do, and I did this when I was in Nashville, is I did get up. And I went for that couch to 10K run, which is, obviously the run, jog, walk. And I found that when I got back, I was ready to take on anything. And so tell me about your, the idea of these dopamine breaks, because I think that, again, like you said, anybody can benefit from them, whether they are ADHD or otherwise.
Yeah, so I won't go into a meeting without having made sure that I have done something to amp up my dopamine. It could be dropping and doing 20 push-ups before the meeting. It could be walking up 10 flights of stairs. Whatever it is, I have to do something to kick up my dopamine, serotonin, because I know that otherwise I'm not going to pay attention. And what's the point of my going to a meeting if I'm not going to pay attention? So for me, it's very much about having to do something to increase those pay attention chemicals, right? Yep. And so I make sure that I do something before every meeting that does that. And it sounds funny because you think, oh, well, dude, just pay attention. Oh, well, shit, screw me, right? Can't believe I didn't think of that earlier. No, it doesn't work like that. It's not that I don't want to pay attention. It's that I'm sitting there and I joke that I'm sitting there and I'm looking at you and I'm listening to you and I see your face and I see your lips moving, and then somehow I'm thinking about how Roman sewage canals were constructed. And I don't exactly know how that happens. But as long as I pay attention to my body and give my body what it needs, in this case, give my brain the dopamine, serotonin, and adrenaline it needs by doing something as simple as 20 push-ups or running up 3 flights of stairs, that's enough to get me through that meeting. And, there are other things you could do to prevent, so I only schedule meetings 1 day a week. Mm-hmm. The rest of the time is because, think about it, a 20-minute meeting is not 20 minutes. It's an hour to get there. It's 45 minutes this time. So, you're killing yourself that way. So I schedule them one day a week. If you want to meet with me outside of that, sure, we can, but it's going to be early, right? Let's have coffee at 5:30 in the morning after my workout. Let's meet for a run. Let's meet for a bike ride, whatever. So I try to incorporate things that allow me to get the best of both worlds. But yeah, I have to make sure that I have sort of, I don't want to say tricked my brain, 'cause it's not really a trick, but make sure that I've fed my brain what it needs to be able to be productive at that meeting. And that goes for pretty much everything. It goes for not only just focusing on meetings, but it goes for, my personal life too. When I come home and see my daughter, I want to make sure that I'm in a good place and make sure I can focus on her and pay attention. So I get outside of the house before I open the door. I actually take a few minutes. I take 10 deep breaths. I let myself calm down. I let myself get out of work mode, right? And get back into personal mode. And that's huge because, I want my daughter's 4 years old. I want her to understand that daddy is paying attention and fully present. I'm not on my phone. I'm not, checking my email, whatever the case may be.
All right. So as we hit the home stretch here, and the things I'm going to talk to you about on the bonus episode is I want to talk about routines, your specific routines, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But I know, and we're in the Philippines. We're talking about this. What else have you been doing while we've been talking?
Currently, right now at this moment, I have been cleaning my office.
Okay.
I've been throwing out stuff on my desk that has accumulated over the past 24 hours, and now it's much cleaner, and I'm much calmer.
So that's
having just done that simple thing of throwing stuff out. I'm much calmer.
And what's interesting is that the stories that we shared. Anybody who's talked to Peter, they're like, okay, we know that you're doing something else when you're talking to us, but you're not. It's not. There's no sense that you haven't been paying attention, and I think that's one of the interesting things that I think people get wrong about people who have ADHD is that they're not paying attention. They seem to be preoccupied, but they're not. Why do you think, how does someone break that pattern? How do, it's like the stigma that's attached to it is the idea that, ADHD, we talked about it earlier, this idea that you can't focus, which is not true. If anything, you could focus.
No, it's not true.
So
you hyper-focus.
Yeah, exactly. So my next question revolves around the things on your list. How do you use a calendar and to-do list in conjunction with one another? Because obviously the calendar, you need to have those things that are sticky, right? The things like the deadlines and things like that. But you've got to have a to-do list as well that kind of helps you guide your way throughout things. How do you manage those things when you've got all these other ideas that could come into your brain at any second, and that you either deal with them now or almost maybe not now or never?
The majority of what I do, my entire schedule and calendar is managed by my assistant,
right.
And I'm smart enough to know that I don't mess with that.
Right.
I don't even have right access to my calendar anymore. Right. She took that away from me because I would tend to screw it up.
Right.
So that's, and once you get over the indignity of that, it's perfectly okay, because I'd rather I'd rather not have control over it. I'd rather, if I want to do something, ask Megan, hey, when can I do this? And then she'll say, oh, you can do it now, because I know that way it's going to be fine. I'm not going to mess it up. Right. But, as opposed to like scheduling 3 meetings at the same time on separate continents, which I may or may not have done. But so the goal for me is to make sure that everything I'm doing has a place and a merit. So I have the calendar. I look at it. I have it open 24 hours a day, or at least, all the time that I'm on my computer. And then I also have Google Keep. And that's open all the time as well. And that really sort of acts as my to-do list, things I need to get done and check off. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of those types of things, and being able to use those things in a way that works for me. So like in a focused, it sounds like, well, that doesn't work for me. Okay, I'm not saying it has to work for you. It works for me.
Right.
And that's the key. It's not crazy. What you're doing is not crazy if it works for you. And a lot of people don't realize that. They're just like, oh, there's no way I could ever do that. That's crazy. No, it's crazy because if it doesn't work for you, that just means it's crazy for you.
Right.
It doesn't mean it's crazy, because for me, it's perfect. Right? Going on an airplane and writing a book might seem crazy to a lot of people. Well, I'm not asking a lot of people to do that.
Right.
It works for me.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's again, a transcontinental flight. There's really, 2 options. Well, 3: sleep, watch movies, and work. I mean, I guess you could read too, but I mean, there's always that pull when I'm on a long flight. And I actually flew back from Nashville to Seattle, which is not a super lengthy flight, but it's 5 hours. And I did work. And you know what? The funny thing is again, you've got that there's an instance on an airplane where you can get work done faster than normal, because there is a limited amount of choice you have, right? You actually, it's one of the few places in the world where you could still have a sense that no one can reach you. Right. And it's still a viable excuse where you say, I'm going to be in the sky for the next X number of hours. Like, okay, well, we'll talk to you when you get done. Last thing I want to talk about is distractions, because that is the kiss of death for anybody, right? If something, I believe that there's a difference between disruptions and distractions. Distractions are things that you can largely mitigate. So, your phone notification going off, you could mitigate that. You could say, okay, you know what, I'm gonna remove that. Whereas disruptions are things you could largely not mitigate. So like, your daughter coming into the only way you could stop your daughter from coming into your bedroom is either tying her up to a chair, and that way she's there and she's not going to move, or sending her out on a play date or something like that. But I mean, for the sake of argument, let's say that distractions are the same. How do you deal with those so that you don't get pulled out of that sense of hyper focus, out of that where things will slow you down or derail you completely?
I have a great quote that says that I use all the time. Airplane mode is not just for airplanes. Mm-hmm. Right. And I shut off when I need to do something, I shut off my phone, or I put myself in a place where I can't be distracted. So there's a great app I use, a great word processing document called OmmWriter, OmmWriter, and OmmWriter shuts off everything on my computer. And I shut off my phone on Wi-Fi or shut off my phone on airplane mode. And I have that ability to do nothing but work. And, I know that I'm doing it for here's as long as I can do it for, until such point as I can. And so I set out, Pomodoro method or whatever, 45 minutes, this way, that way. Point being, the goal is to be able to do everything I need to do and get it done. And the distractions, some distractions are worth it. If I could sit down and go into deep work, and that's why I have an office. I have an office because when you have a 4-year-old kid and a nanny, I'm a single dad, and I have a 4-year-old kid and a nanny. And that basically means I don't own my apartment anymore. It means it's owned by the 4-year-old kid and the nanny. I came home early a couple weeks ago, and there were 5 children and 5 nannies in my apartment. I'm looking around going, where the fuck, who are you people? Where's my daughter? Yeah. So for me, I tend to focus on going into my office, my private office, getting my work done here, going home. And I know I'll do other things after I put her to bed or whatever the case may be, but just being very aware of my time.
Right. See, I'm the type of guy, and this is interesting because if I know the dishes are dirty upstairs and it's not clean upstairs, that bothers me, and I have to leave the house. Exactly. I have to leave the house because otherwise I'm like, well, it's that pull of like, I can get that done quickly. And that's I guess, you talked about dopamine breaks. And I want to touch on this really quickly, that's the danger of the quick win is great when you need the quick win. But if you just get a bunch of quick and small wins, you never really get that big win taken care of, right? That book written, that proposal done, that that company founded. Instead, you're spending all your time, quickly, just in email all day, or you're, washing dishes or whatever, right?
My dad used to say his comment on baseball is that you can't win games by playing catch up ball.
Right.
Right. So you got to get in front of it. Yep. You got to figure out ways to get in front of it.
So Peter, the book is out now. It's as of this airing. So where can people get it, and where can they find you when they want to learn more about, other than obviously traveling in an airplane? Because if you're sitting next to him, he's going to talk to you.
And no question about it, unless you fake your death. So the book is called Faster Than Normal. It is available anywhere you can buy a book, or just go to the website fasterthannormalbook.com, and it'll direct you to your favorite bookstore of choice. My life is at shankman.com, and I am at Peter Shankman on all of the socials.
Peter, thanks for joining me today on the Productivityist podcast.
Pleasure was mine, Mike. Good talking to you again.
Big thanks to Peter for joining me this week on the show. If you want to learn more about him and all the stuff we talked about, check out the show notes. Everything that we talked about is listed there, all the relevant links, all that stuff. And we also dove into routines and rituals, as well as four last questions on the bonus episode that's for members only. Head over to patreon.com/productivityist to learn more about that. Thanks to John Poster for producing this week's episode of the show. Thanks to my team for helping put together the show in its entirety. And thanks to you for listening. Until next time, I'm Mike Vardy, host of the Productivityist podcast, reminding you to stop guessing and start going.